So before we go further, what I want to clarify is what do we mean by hybrid cloud and where is the session going to focus? So the model that we're going to be talking about is infrastructure as a service. So we're talking about from the storage, the hypervisor compute, all the way up the app stack. We're responsible for all of it, and that's what we're going to cover now. In Amazon, when we talk about public cloud, we don't control the compute, the storage, the network, but we still control the operating system all the way up. So that's the level we're going to be talking about. And specifically when we say hybrid cloud, it's because it's not anymore a case of is it in my data center or in public cloud. It's not just public cloud when we say cloud. It's a mixture of both that we want to really cover. So, and what I wanted to do is if we can roll the demo, we've got a pre-created demo here showing kind of what a service catalog looks like. And I wanted to show this first because I think this is what the customers are really, your customers for IT are really looking for, is a place to go where they can consume services. And Eric also mentioned about marketing earlier today as well, is we need to constantly be marketing our cloud. It's no good to just build a portal and build all these services. Everybody's job is to market services. And you can see behind me in the demo here, this is a full-blown out catalog. We've got a lot of services here, and we can definitely demo this to you, and we'll go more through this as we go on. But you're not going to start out. Your cloud isn't going to look like this with tons and tons of services in it day one. It's going to look more like this with a private cloud on vSphere. Take your existing infrastructure, add some automation and orchestration, and present some basic services like a Windows blueprint, a Linux blueprint that users can go and consume. And then once you've moved on from sort of your private cloud, you may look to use AWS as well, or Azure. And this is a really interesting conversation because, as Eric mentioned, somebody can go to AWS, swipe their credit card, and consume services, but there are so many. There are 8,000 templates and instance types that you can consume in AWS. So what you would do in your cloud management platform is broker those and decide which services you want to actually present. And if you look at the services that we've presented here in AWS, these are all a rel option and a Windows option there, but there's all different instance types in Amazon. We've got M series, R series. If we click this service, we have an R series come up. This is a memory optimized instance in AWS. Now your users aren't really going to understand this. They don't know that a compute optimized instance costs more. That's something that you want to present and adjust your cloud catalog so it's more meaningful for the users. So going further up, the next things you might want to offer are platform services like SQL, IaaS, a LAMP stack. And then further on, an application for a QA team or something you actually might want to use. So this is our head aviation pet transport application that we have here. This allows you to move your cat around the world from Chicago to London and back again. But this kind of demonstrates that you can actually deliver an entire application all the way up the stack. The user can go in here, maybe it's 5 for QA testing, so you request 5 machines, lease times, CPUs, etc. They go ahead and submit the request, and then that's going to go on and build in the background, which we'll see in a minute. So while that's going on, the other thing about the cloud catalog, it needs to be very meaningful and present good information to the user. So that's where the requests section comes in. Can they actually go here and see the state of their server? And then once they're built, can they get an items list and actually see, here's all my servers, what can I do on them as well? What actions can I take? Are you going to entitle this group of users to power on and off their server? Or are you going to not allow them to do that? Can you allow users to snapshot, etc.? Then the usual stuff is going on behind the scenes. And I think Brett made a great point about the converged infrastructure and hyper-converged infrastructure. We really don't care, well, we care about it, and Brett certainly does, but from my point of view, we try to ignore that as much as possible. It should be transparent to the application. The servers are going to build on vSphere. It's a good opportunity to look at your infrastructure when you're building a cloud, because this is a time where speed is everything. The developers want servers back over to them very, very quickly. And if you've got modern storage arrays, like TinTree, Nutanix, etc., they can speed your deployments. And we can clone a server in 6 seconds now, which is amazing. This is our web page for a head aviation pet transport blog. Tim Carr wrote some garbage in here too, but it's a pretty funny web page that we got there. And what we looked at there was VMware vRealize automation. There's other tools in the industry as well. So it might be Azure Stack, and not sure what's happened to the video presentation there, but Cisco UCS Director as well. So if we want to switch back to slides. Any second. There we go. So why are companies going down this journey? And I think this kind of demonstrates the old way of doing things, this archaic process where we take our scroll of this is my server build and hand it off between teams, the server team, the network team, the backup team, the monitoring team, all these teams that have to get involved. And the purpose of a cloud isn't to eliminate those jobs by any means. It's to empower those users and build the orchestration and automation that we'll go through in a moment. But from the user coming to the cloud portal, they do not see any of this. They go there, just like they could in Amazon. It's a cloud on premises on vSphere, but they just go into a portal and saying, I want my pet application, I want IaaS server, I want a SQL server. And all these things are just happening behind the scenes with input from those teams, but the users don't wait for those handoffs. So how do we build this? That's what the session's about. How do we build the hybrid cloud? And there's a number of tool sets that you need to really get started. One being the cloud lifecycle management piece, the other one being orchestration, and the third one being configuration management. So cloud management platform. This is, again, will users see it from the service catalog? IT sees it from the entire process that happens to build a server, from starting of the birth of the server or service to retirement of it. So request approval. What services are you entitling users to? How many resources they're entitled to use? Provisioning. How does the cloud management platform hand off to orchestration and automation? That's another key part there. You can see the synergies between all the tools are very, very important here. Then the manage phase, so that's tools like Puppet Chef. The server's going to be around for, might be 2 days, it might be 2 years. How do you keep it in a consistent state to what you desire? Then we're back over in retirement, we're back to orchestration again. The cloud management platform has to tell the orchestration tools, go ahead and retire the server, clean it up. We don't want to automate provisioning, and then now when somebody deletes a server, we've got to go, clean everything up because they didn't reclaim the IP address, remove it from monitoring. All those things have to happen. So orchestration, probably my favorite topic, and the easiest way to explain this, and my colleague Adam, who just joined us a couple of weeks ago from Ford, said, is it really automation and orchestration, or is it automation and integration? And I think the integration word really describes what we're doing with orchestration a lot more. It's how do we interface with all of our third-party systems, IPAM, monitoring, backups, all of that's what the orchestration is going to do. The other way to think about it is it's the glue that really kind of holds everything together in your cloud. It's connecting to all your external systems. And the way you go about building this is think of this as a microservices task library. Think about the things you want to build, and then go and build these Lego bricks in your orchestration tool that makes sense. So if we think about one task you might do is join Active Directory. So let's go and build a module specifically for that. Other tasks might be getting an IP address from Infobox. Let's go and build a task for that. Now, this is in contradiction to the old way of doing things, which is a giant script to do everything. You could write this whole thing in PowerCLI or PowerShell. You could write a Bash script, Python scripts, etc. But the idea is to modularize everything so it's much more reusable across teams. And then you can take all these Lego bricks that you've built, and this is an investment phase to kind of build those out. But then you can take them and start to construct workflows in the orchestration tools, and that's more of a drag and drop kind of system that you'll find that you can kind of move on to. Then those will run and take effect in your environment. So then configuration management. This is the kind of the third layer of everything in your cloud management platform. And when we say configuration management, we're not talking specifically around like your CMDB. That's still there, and that's for, it still needs to be updated as part of the cloud. By configuration management here, we mean the configuration of the servers, everything inside the guest. So it helps to think of orchestration as everything going on outside of the VM, talking to IPAM, backup monitoring. Configuration management, start to think of everything inside the virtual machine. What are the Windows settings, the applications I want to install. And these tools have grown a lot, specifically when it comes to release management and interface in the software development teams. We hear Puppet and DevOps, Chef and DevOps, all these tools a lot now because, if you can integrate them into things like Bamboo and Jenkins and release management, the software development teams can lay down their configurations that they've just built basically very easily. So how does this work? Very similar to orchestration. We build a bunch of Lego bricks. Just now, these are Lego bricks that are going to be used inside the operating system. So, it could be modules for the Windows team. That would be things like PowerShell settings, UAC settings, things like that. The Windows team would own that module, and build that out using whatever tool you decide upon. Linux team, same thing. They still own the OS. They still got to manage it. They're going to operate it, once it goes live. So what do they need to do? SQL team for database, and these go on and on. You get the idea all the way up the app stack. What the tools allow us to do is define roles for our servers that we can then present into our cloud. So if we saw the pet aviation application, that server basically inherits a role for deploying the pet application. And the way we do that is we take these modules and we build the role. We just say, okay, SQL server in this example, you're going to use the Windows module, you're going to use the SQL module, and you're going to use the security module. The security team probably controls local administrator settings and things like that. With that said, those are all the tools. Don't jump straight in and start coding. This is kind of the process that we go down, is to really sit down and map out the process. A lot of our workshops, we spend designing the build process and adjusting the build process. And this is a time to challenge everything. Don't just go and automate the old way of doing things. Decide, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that task anymore. Maybe adding an IPAM system will make things a lot easier. Maybe just automating change control is a big one that we talk about a lot. But definitely trying to streamline the process and figure it out before you go to the tool. And then once you've identified all these Lego bricks individually that you decide you want to build and keep in your build process, and don't forget retirement again. Retirement of servers is just as important, is go through this process, prioritize, standardize, procedurize, automate, and publish. And standardization, I'm sure everybody's heard it time and time again, is absolutely key to all of us. Spend the time and say, okay, well, I'm gonna allow patching. I need to patch every Windows server. Okay, well, what are the patching windows I'm going to offer my users? And then when they go to the catalog and they select a Windows server, you make them select a patch window. It might be the Tuesday after the patches come out from Microsoft for a development server, but you make them selected there and you decide what options you want to give your users. The other big one is backups as well. What backup options do you want to give users? And really cover all of those things. And once you've done the standardization phase, then we can move into creating procedures. So if there was an old way of doing things where you would click in the GUI and then somebody would get that archaic scroll request and then they would go and click a bunch of stuff to enable a backup policy, take what you did in the GUI, write down the procedures for it manually. What would you do on the command line to configure it? And then take all that and put it into your automation tool, your orchestration tool. The biggest mistake we've made, and I see some of our delivery guys nodding here, as we've seen it before, people have just got into the tool and started coding. It's absolutely important to spend the time kind of doing this. And then the fun part, you can publish it to the user. They don't care all the stuff we just talked about. They just want to see the service in the catalog ready to go. Get everyone involved, and I speak about this a lot, is don't make the cloud team a team that takes over the environment and becomes another silo. I think it's important that lots and lots of teams have the ability to experiment. We talked about fail often earlier, and Gene and Erica kind of hit on a lot of that, is lots of teams should be involved in building these modules. The more of these Lego bricks that we have, now whether it's an app team building it, a WebSphere team, a network team building firewall rules and modules, the more people that can use the same tools and Lego bricks we can build, the more rich experiences we can build in our cloud. So we try to think of it as the cloud team as really kind of stewards of the environment that help motivate and help it encourage innovation in the environment. So what's the end result? Well, still our archaic scroll. We can probably get something more modern for that. But now it's basically the order form gets filled out, and the scroll's going to go around and talk to the orchestration tools. Basically, going to go and touch all of these systems. Each thing is going to take a few seconds, and even cloning servers down to 6 seconds now. We can't solve the sysprep issue, but we're getting pretty quick. Update CMDB, and then orchestration tool hands off to configuration management, and that's where the tools really align up. So the order was for an SQL server, orchestration gets the VM online on the network, and then hands over to configuration management to apply the server role, and now it's going to inherit that configuration. Again, from then on, manage it in your configuration management tools. So a lot of people say to me, well, what's the journey? How do I get started in that? It's great that I can show you a full application, but where do I begin? And we try to call this first phase the plumbing phase. It's not the most exciting. There's not, you don't get as much value straight off. But that plumbing phase is really to get us to fully automated operating system requests. So I can provision a Windows server and I can retire a Windows server without needing to hand off anything back to IT. So the user can go to the portal, they can delete their server, they can spin it up again, delete it, spin it up again. there's nothing else to do. And this phase typically, in most organizations, takes 3 to 6 months to do. And it varies depending on how many people you throw at it. There's a lot of skill development there, there's training, and that's what happens. After that phase though, things get very, very exciting. You know, we can start to move up the stack. Everything now, the orchestration layer doesn't change that much anymore. Every additional service is just a variant of something going on inside the operating system. So now we're really into Puppet, Chef, those tools. Provide, you know, if we want the pet application, that's just another Puppet module that installs a piece of software. Build it, present it as a service. And the next hurdle really after kind of presenting IaaS and SQL is multi-machine blueprints. You know, we started to do a lot in that. How do I deploy 2 web servers, 2 app servers, 2 DB servers with the load balancer, with the firewall? And that's where technologies like NSX are so exciting for us because we can start to do that. And then, as Gene kind of mentioned, continuous development. How do we get the application team so far involved? How does the infrastructure team start to really operate like an application team so you can really start to churn these services out? So other areas of automation, you know, once you've kind of spent all the time doing the orchestration, it doesn't really end with provisioning. Provisioning is only one area, and there's only one type of service you might be thinking about presenting to your cloud. You know, operations and maintenance, ITIL automation are all things that, you know, we encourage people to do, you know, after they've built the provisioning capabilities. And the growth areas for us, particularly networking and storage, as we already mentioned, you know, how do I automatically provision the network? But storage too is how do I, when I run low on space, how do I make sure that my storage arrays automatically add in space to my VMware environment? How do I automate, you know, blade provisioning for ESXi hosts as my cloud starts to accelerate? Operations and maintenance. Now, we spend a lot of time. It used to be more self-healing data center. Everyone was interested in more, but it's sort of day 2 operations has become so important now. You know, when you put a tool in like vRealize automation and you can power on, power off a machine, it's not normally enough. You know, when you're in AWS and you've got something like Protect V encrypting Amazon VMs out there, the power on and off feature doesn't work. You know, it's taken away from you in Amazon. You have to now write a SOAP or REST call over to Protect V so that can power on and power off VMs in AWS because it now controls the method because of the encryption at rest. So then you build a new day 2 operation. You say power on and off an AWS encrypted VM, and that's something you publish to people. Other ones that are very common, a snapshot my VM, you know, VMware guys know, every time somebody asks for a snapshot, it's around for 2 years, you know. Ideally not, but we've seen it. And offering a snapshot option where you say, you can snapshot your VM, but it's going to delete itself in 3 days, and that's the policy. But giving them the control to actually do that against their virtual machines is a great one. The other one also is taking servers out of monitoring. You know, if somebody powers on and off the server, somebody's going to get alerts. How do you change that power on and off operation so it actually takes the server out of monitoring because one of the users of the application decided to do it? So I wanted to give our thoughts on the state of the market. You know, we've seen the tool sets, but there's so many vendors in the space. I think what I would say is in the last year, a light switch has just kind of gone off, and the tools maybe have just reached the level of maturity now where they can actually deliver this in a very meaningful way. But there's so much going on in the space. So within those 3 categories, there's a lot of tools to talk about. And first one, VMware. You know, they've got the vRealize suite now. VMware seems to change the name of their product every year, so I don't know what it'll be in a few months' time. But it was Dynamic Ops, which was acquired in 2012, and later on became VMware vCloud Automation Center, and is now known as the vRealize suite. And it's interesting because VMware have obviously realized, you know, they used to couple the bundling and the packaging very much with their hypervisor, but the vRealize suite, they actually bundle it separately. So if you're using Hyper-V, KVM, the vRealize automation suite will actually work with those products as well and can be purchased separately. Tremendous amount of momentum in VMware, and it's mostly because of vRealize Orchestrator. VMware have been bundling Orchestrator with vCenter for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now, and the community just kind of rallied around that tool. So there's so many plugins available for VMware Orchestrator today that can connect to your third-party systems, and that's been a reason for the growth of that product. It's free with your vCenter license, just Orchestrator, so even if you don't have vRealize automation, highly encourage people to start using their orchestration tool straight away. Cisco UCS Director, this was the Cloudpeer acquisition, also in 2012. Seems like everybody wanted to buy a cloud tool in 2012, and you know, it changed so much in the past 3 years. You know, I think a year ago we didn't like it again. Before that we liked it when it was Cloudpeer, and in the last year we've seen a lot of momentum. And what we like about it is its ability to provision physical systems very quickly. So whether that's UCS, NetApp, EMC, and VMware, if you want to provision blades very quickly and lay things on top, which may become more and more important as we talk about containers and Docker and that movement, because there's a desire for more physical systems now. So we've definitely seen a lot of interest in that from a physical standpoint. On that point, I would just say that things like vRealize automation can talk to Cisco UCS Director. So if you decide to use something like UCS Director for your physical provisioning, you could still use vRealize automation and present the UCS Director catalog items inside vRealize automation. So something to think about there. Microsoft has been an incredible amount of interest in the last 12 months. They have had a complete reinvention of themselves, it seems like. And their tools are still a little over the place right now. I think they have 5 automation tools: Azure Automation, SCORE, we've got SMA, PowerShell DSC, and SCCM. So there's 5 tools now that we're still trying to figure out what are they going to kind of do. The interesting thing is that they no longer treat VMware and Linux as a second-class citizen anymore. They're really starting to go out and make it Microsoft a management platform for the entire data center. Their strongest play, though, is really around, they have a public cloud offering, which we all know is Azure. They now have Azure Stack and Azure Pack coming. Azure Stack coming out next year. Azure Pack is out already. And that allows you to deploy the entire Azure public cloud on premises. And that means you can basically build an application that can run on premises in Azure's PaaS services on premises and take it to the public cloud, and it will work in both locations. The other interesting thing about that is their infrastructure as a service level. They support VMware as an infrastructure as a service platform now. So their portal, while it's still gaining maturity and there's still a lot of work to go on there, eventually could be a cloud portal where you can consume your vSphere infrastructure and deploy vSphere VMs, but through a Microsoft cloud portal, which I don't think any of us would have thought about a few years ago. OpenStack, so much momentum, so much hype. Finally, I think, get into a point where a lot of partners have embraced it. There's a lot of partner variants of OpenStack coming out. We definitely are working on this in our lab right now to really get a sense of, it's complex to install, but it's becoming easier and easier with reference architectures and partners really getting behind OpenStack. So we've got a lot of momentum behind it. We think it'll keep growing. What we really like about OpenStack is the strong APIs for software development. And we're working with a customer right now where they're doing a DevOps team who's basically got their build process where it can basically kick off the builds and then their software gets deployed. It's actually using Chef, and then it does automated testing. And if the servers pass automated testing, it just tears them down. If it doesn't pass, it actually keeps them up, and then they can go and see what went wrong. And that's very difficult today with some of VMware and Cisco's API sets. And that's one of the strengths of OpenStack. So, as OpenStack is gaining, we think a lot of those ideas around open APIs will just transfer into the other products anyway. So definitely a lot of momentum and a lot of interest there. Where do we go from here? Building the cloud is not enough. We have to be thinking about operations and capacity planning. What are my low watermarks and high watermarks? What do I give users? I'm giving business groups now the ability to come in and consume services. What can they consume? Can this group power on and off a VM and this group can't? What do I do when do I add more compute and storage capacity? It's a big topic. Team structure, I talked about getting everyone involved. A lot of companies, trying to figure out how do I organize my teams around this? It's a massive culture shift internally. We see VMware teams becoming cloud teams with development teams, dotted lines, all sorts of things. But again, our focus is always how do we empower the enterprise and how do we give sandboxes out to people so everybody can innovate and play with these tools. Public cloud acceleration. Eric Terrell has a session later on today that I highly encourage everyone to listen to. And public cloud is accelerating for a couple of reasons, just all the features they're adding, but the cost just keeps coming down. Everybody's on a race to the bottom. It seems like Google now is entering the market, and Azure drops their price by $0.01 per VM, and then Amazon does, and it's going to be an ongoing thing. So, when we build in the cloud, the good thing is using these frameworks, of cloud management, orchestration, configuration management, it doesn't matter if we deploy on premises or when the time comes, do we want to deploy to public cloud? It doesn't make sense to just move everything to the public cloud. It doesn't make sense to just migrate everything in there. There's use cases that fit both, and that should be examined. DevOps and cloud management platform. We already heard from Gene this morning, and I'm certainly not going to be able to explain it any better than he did. And the DevOps movement is definitely here, and I'd say probably 50% of every cloud engagement we're in now, the development teams are there and are a big part of the conversation, and I think that's just going to continue to grow. And particularly when we think about Docker, what does that mean, and what do containers really mean for us? Because does that mean now infrastructure as a service needs to provide container VMs. And like we have an example in our demo of Photon, we have a small and a large one, and it's basically a container host that application teams can then deploy their containers into. Is that the way we're going to provide service? Or is it more, I just build a physical machine with a lightweight Linux or Windows OS in it, and I'm going to deploy my containers directly to the physical machine? Does that mean we waste resources now? Is the hypervisor still necessary? So this is a growth space for us right now. We don't have all the answers. I think companies are just experimenting with Docker today, but we're doing a lot of work around that, and it's a very interesting conversation. Last thing I want to hit on again is just Ahead Aviation, our lab. I'll be up on the 10th floor and in the lounge area if anybody wants to see demos or get deeper into the stuff. We have a briefing that we're launching, a deep dive automation and orchestration briefing. And this is a 3 to 4 hour briefing where you can, there's a break in between, but you can kind of bring your engineers along and actually get into the tools. We'll build workflows, we'll build Puppet modules, live and show you how to do this end to end. It's one thing to see it from PowerPoint, but we definitely want to show you. And that's across all our tools. So that's UCS Director, VMware, OpenStack when we go live with that one, and the Microsoft stack we will have in our labs. So definitely encourage that.